Good morning, Facebook. Hope everybody's having a great day. You can probably see already we're one man down. I took his seat this time, but today we are joined with Kevin Krantz, one of our favorite guys. The other one, he's here in spirit. He's in the back working on cars right now, so a little busy back there. But Kevin, you brought something for us. First off, sorry I didn't tell you. I'm Kim Kelly, Service and Parts Director at Audi Hampton, and I'm just amazed with this little prop that Kevin brought for us today to go over a few things, and it looks like fuses to me. So, fuse box, fuse panel. And
it is.
What do we got?
So, we're going to talk a little bit today about fuses. One, how important they are. Two, how many the car has. And three, they are hidden all over the car. So, let's talk a little bit about fuses. Obviously, we have a 12-volt battery that powers everything on the car, and then we have wiring that goes out to various components, your power window, your power seat, lights, things like that. So if we have a problem with a seat or a power window, let's say the window doesn't work, and it is caused by the insulation being rubbed off and the wires actually touching body ground somewhere, it's designed to blow the fuse. So if we didn't have a fuse or the correct fuse in place, it would actually cause the wiring to get quite hot to a point where the insulation would actually melt off. I could have brought one of those too.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, actually start a fire. So that's obviously very bad. So fuses are very important. They're there to protect not only the component that they're set up for, but also the wiring and the rest of the vehicle. People, a fuse is a fuse, right? The house, we used to have screw-in fuses many moons ago. Today, everything's a circuit breaker. So some of this.
About the screw-in fuses, I'm just going to say I don't.
That's all right. So, on cars today, a lot of the technology is changing. So I'm not going to go off to it, but we do have some electronic fuses on the car. But what I have brought with me today are two fuse boxes with some of the various types of fuses that Mercedes-Benz uses, and just some tips and suggestions what to do if something doesn't work and you want to investigate further. So in all of our cars, there is a fuse card, and it's basically a piece of, I don't have one with me, but a paper-sized card, and a lot of our cars have multiple fuse boxes on the car. So there may be one under the hood, there may be one in the trunk, or if it's an SUV in the rear. We do have some under the seat. So some of these are very easy to get to and some are quite difficult to get to. The one under the seat, unfortunately, you actually have to remove the seat, so we're not going to dive into that too much. But really just to cover what you might see, for example, a cigarette lighter. You got your phone plugged in and your cigarette lighter adapter for your phone isn't quite right, and you put it into the lighter, and all of a sudden you may hear a pop or a snap possibly, or it doesn't work at all. The fuse is blown, so now what do? You can come see us, of course.
Yeah, that's the best.
But if you want to tackle it, first thing would be to get your fuse card. It's typically with the spare tire or with the jack. I know some of our brand new cars really don't have anything back there, but it should be back there with the first aid kit, the owner's manual, things like that. So there is a list of components on one column, and it tells you the type of fuse, whether it be a 10 amp, 20 amp, 25 amp, or and its location in the car. So if it's under the hood, obviously a matter of opening the hood and removing the cover. and finding the fuse. Most of the fuses, I don't know if you can really tell in this one, they are numbered, and the fuse diagram that you have actually has an exact copy of this. So once you get the reference of holding the fuse card in the same direction that you're looking at the fuse box, you can count. As you can see, this fuse box probably has about 40 different fuses in there. I've only got a few plugged in, but anyways, it's just a matter of finding the fuse. You know, in this case, I'm just guessing at this particular one, but you can pull the fuse out. Always remember where you pulled it out from. This is always a good one. I'll come back to that in a second. And you can look to see if the little element in the center is burned or not. In this case, this particular fuse is good, but a burned one would be an open in the center. So obviously, if it's burned open, we want to identify the fuse, whether it's a 10 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp. You can also identify it on your fuse card and make sure that we put back the same amperage fuse that we took out and back into the same location. Extremely important to stick it back in the same location. Some of these slots are empty for a reason. I have chased a couple of problems where somebody was trying to replace a fuse, put it back in the wrong slot, and for some reason lights in the instrument cluster would stay on all the time. Well, it only took about 5 or 6 hours to figure that out. So it only took 30 seconds to create it, but took a few hours to figure it out.
Because you didn't know that it had been moved.
Something that you don't anticipate a fuse being where it doesn't belong. So
what's going on with that one over there?
So this is a good example. Oh, I don't know if that. This is a good example of possibly the wrong fuse being installed. You can actually see the plastic housing is actually missing from the fuse. This fuse got quite hot for this plastic to melt away. But again, as you can see, the element, the actual fuse itself, is actually still intact. The contact inside burned and eventually it failed, and this loose or burned contact inside generated more heat than the fuse could handle, and the housing melted away. Now, I'm not going to get off with amperage draw of the fuses, but typically the fuse, if it's rated for 20 amps, it will probably handle 20, 21, 22, 23 amps for a very brief period of time, maybe a second or two, depending on the type of fuse. Most fuses are designed really to be twice what the load of the circuit is. So if the load of the circuit is typically about 10 amps, we would have a 20 or 25 amp fuse in there. So if we stuck a 5 amp fuse in where a 20 amp fuse belongs, then when we operate the circuit, that fuse will probably pop immediately. So
that's why it's really important to pay attention, know what you're doing, or just bring it to us so we can put the right fuse in the right place.
And we can check it. So this fuse box, obviously we had to replace it because we could not repair it. It actually melted the contacts, but utilizing the right fuse and putting it in the right position and the right amperage, few little details that we got to make sure. Again, going by your fuse card that you have in the vehicle is a big help. Again, if you have any questions, that's what we're here for. Come see us and we'll figure that out. So the other thing I wanted to cover were the different types of fuses. So for example, this is what we call a maxi fuse, and it's quite a bit larger, and these are much heavier loads.
Brand specific?
These are actually, I think it's the little fuse, but these are, can't get it out now. There we go. Let's see. There are a couple different fuses companies out there. I think Little Fuse is one. And you can, I don't know if I can read it off the top. These are from Mercedes directly, but they have somebody manufacturing them for them. So you can also see the fuses are actually come teeny tiny as well. These are the minis, if I get one out here.
And what would a mini operate?
Well, as you can see, the fuse box has some unusual, this is some of the stuff we fight with, has some unusual configurations in some cases. You can see this one's long and skinny, and this one's a little bit shorter, so there may be a room issue in some cases. Why they came out with the mini, I'm not exactly sure. It may be cost, convenience. They're usually, like any good engineer, we have to keep ourselves in business, right? We have to manufacture all these different kinds of fuses. So also on top of that, and if you look closely, you can see a little letter, I think that says N. And I think on this one we have the letter S, teeny tiny. And these are specialty fuses that are in a lot of our newer cars. And these fuses are designed to handle a higher load for a long period of time. Where a regular fuse, in this case, we can see it melted away. This fuse is actually designed to handle this higher load. Again, if the amperage exceeds its rating, that one happens to be 25 amps, the fuse would pop, but it would not pop immediately. It would probably last, maybe 5 to 10 seconds with right at 25 amp draw. Obviously, if we had a wire that was a dead short to ground, that would draw potentially 30, 40, 50 amps very quickly, and of course then the fuse would blow. Again, it's designed to protect the circuit. So something simple as a fuse, you can see we have 4 different sizes, and we actually have a 4th type of fuse. Not only do we have a standard fuse, we have the silver fuse, we have the nickel fuse, and then we have an E fuse. And they're all identified by the markings after the number. Again, that one's a silver fuse, has the S, and that was a nickel fuse with the N. Part of the reason why they went to some of this stuff is that in certain parts of the country you have high humidity, so you have a lot of moisture, can contribute to corrosion, loose connections, and electrical problems. So the engineers are coming up with all kinds of ideas to try to eliminate those types of conditions. Let's see what else we have. The multi-leg fuse. So this is something that we've seen only recently in the last few years, and we have one main feed side, and you can see the power bar across the top, and then we have 6 legs on this particular fuse, and each leg is 7.5, it's 5 amp. And you can see all of these contacts, so we have lots of stuff protected by a fuse in a very small area. If we had to line up 6 fuses, we can see the area that we would need to occupy would be much, much larger. So this happens to be a fuse box that you would not normally gain access to. This is actually behind some panels, but we have to go into our wiring diagrams and find the circuit, find what's going on. This was a probably water damage vehicle where we had to put a complete wiring harness in, so we tend to save bits and pieces. These fuses, they keep us guessing with new stuff coming out. We have a new S car coming out here very shortly, and I have no doubt that we will see another new fuse of some sort. So just like everything else about the car technology, it keeps marching forward, and you know, these are some of the advances, changes. And again, if you want to change your own fuse, certainly a little homework and research, paperwork from the vehicle. If you can't find the fuse locally, obviously you can come to the dealer and purchase the fuse as well. But
seems like, though, for something that should
be
simple,
pretty easy,
you've really got to pay attention to what you're doing, or you can end up with a problem you don't need to have.
yes, this particular repair probably was somewhere in the part alone is about $300 plus the labor and the diagnostic time to figure out everything. So it was probably a $600 or $700 repair. I don't know if it was the wrong fuse put in, but obviously had a failure.
Yeah. Wow, that's some good stuff, and great props, and a little show and tell, and something that you thought was pretty simple, pretty easy to do, and it can be if you do your research. It's not that terrible if you do your research and know what you're doing. Don't try to get into one of these guys, though.
Yeah, the some of them, you know, under the seat and under the panels, typically you're not in there, and these are more power window, power seat, more accessory type things that typically don't see a problem, but you can gain access. You just got to know what you're doing. Don't want to break anything taking stuff apart. Obviously, the fuse box under the hood is the easiest one, and I can't stress enough how many cars we see come in where the fuse box cover is laying next to it. Okay, if you take the fuse box cover off, please put the fuse box cover back on. The fuses, the fuse modules are not waterproof, and when it rains, it comes rolling right into the fuse box, and then you've got big problems. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for bringing these little toys and showing everybody how that works. Anything else on it? Are we good to go?
I think that covers about everything. Obviously, there are more fuses on the car. There's only other thing I would touch on maybe is on our SRS system. Again, this is not something that a client would touch, but just a FYI, really. If you were to get into an accident and have airbags deploy, our cars now are equipped with a pyro fuse on the positive battery cable. The pyro fuse is controlled through the SRS control module, and the idea is that if you were in even if you were in a minor accident or a major accident, when the fire rescue come, sometimes they got to cut the car open. So our cars are equipped with anywhere from 6, 8, 10, 12 airbags. So if they needed to cut the door open or cut the roof off the vehicle, they want to be sure that everything is disconnected, doesn't have any power supply. So the pyro fuse is designed in an accident to blow and cut the power supply off to the entire vehicle. So it's just a safety measure. So it's just another type of fuse that the vehicle does have. So
thank you. Thanks for bringing it, and we'll be back next week with another tech topic, Tech Talk Thursday.
Yep.
Hopefully Larry will be back with us, and you guys can talk about something else cool. And until then, we'll see you later, and have a great rest of the day, great weekend.